It is finally here. After a very long time of discussing with my father if I could POV test drive his 3.7 litre 2003 model Jeep Cherokee 6-cylinder. This car is a beauty. This is a amazing old-timer. Yes, the interior may not be luxury as you're used to from newer cars, but this car was actually kind of ahead of its time. Performance-wise, let me speak about the specs. So it's a 3.7 litre V6. It is a Jeep Cherokee, not to confuse with the Jeep Grand Cherokee, which is a V8 4 litre, if not mistaken. We used to have this car before we had this car. We sold it many years ago because it had a lot of technical issues, and this car is brilliant, man. This is not a daily driver at all. You really only buy this car when you really need it, or if you've got basically money to spend and you're like, you know what, I want a nice muscle car, a V6, then this car is brilliant. Now, the reason why my dad has this car and owns it, he's had it for a very long time, is for every day. He doesn't drive on it every single day, but he basically drives whenever he feels like it. I drive it with the dogs. We're crossing an intersection right here, so it's very dangerous, but it is an amazing car. You may notice, yes, no radio, because believe it or not, this car does not start up with the radio in it. It basically, we found out after a long time, we didn't understand when we had to recharge the battery every single time we wanted to start the car up. We were like, how is it not starting? You know, the battery's full, it doesn't have any check engine light, but it wouldn't start. Turned out the battery was fucking around with the radio, I'm sorry, was fucking around with the battery, so that was very annoying. So this car was introduced in the late 2000s, and it was very ahead of its time back then. It was actually very modern, it was very luxury, but you'd actually be quite surprised. Would you believe me if I say this car is actually one of the most unreliable and unsafest cars in the car market? Yes, you hear that correctly. You may not expect that, but this car is actually not safe at all. Compared from now to 20 years ago, it scores the lowest ranking safety for anything. Although this thing is a fucking beast to have on its own. It's a beautiful V6. I love that about American cars. Would have probably been better if it had a V8, but you know, at the end of the day, you can't have all what you have. This car drives amazing. That's the one thing I have to say right off the bat. When you get in a car like this, yes, it has high mileage, as you can see on the dash. It's got 200,000 plus on the dashboard. That's in kilometers, so that's not miles. But you know, miles don't always determine on how a car is. Unless it's a BMW, then you should not buy it, in my opinion, because then the check engine light will turn on every time you try to start the car up. But this car drives good. It's a really nice car. Fucking hell, this is a dangerous road. I've not been in yet. It's not fast, obviously. I mean, if you buy a car like this, you do not buy it for its performance. You buy it for what it's able to do, and what it is able to do is pull stuff out the ground. A lot of people you'll see driving in the Netherlands and in America as well, with the V8s and the Rams and whatsoever, they buy these cars for the businesses. So basically what they do is, if they got a business, they put it on the business name, they get reduced tax on the road, they get tax backs from the government every single like quarter or something. Downside about this car is it is very unreliable, meaning that you will have a lot of fuckers with this model, especially if it's got an older engine in it. And this is an automatic, as you can see. You can have a normal transmission, a gear, but automatic on this drives so smooth. You don't even notice it changes gear so frequently, so smooth, so often. The road tax on it, this is something I wanted to explain as well. The road tax is heavy on this thing. Yeah, that's the one thing why a lot of people don't buy this car in the Netherlands at my age or as a teenager, is because the road tax is unfortunately very high in the car. As cheap it is to buy a car like this car you can pick up for 2.5 grand, maybe even less sometimes. The road tax is very heavy. This is about $400 per 3 months just to have it on the road. That's excluding insurance, that's excluding everything else. So you're looking at a couple grand a year just for this car. And you know what they often say, if it costs more than the car, then you shouldn't buy it. However, I think that if you really like old school cars, because a lot of people also, they don't care about interior, you know. They don't care about, oh, you know, it doesn't have to have a heads up display. It doesn't have to be full of options. As long as it just gets me to A to B, this will do it for you. However, it's not very good with the gallons. Oh my god, this thing probably drives 107, 108. If you're lucky, 109. Or maybe even 10 sometimes. It really depends on the circumstances with the weather, the roads. As you can see, the roads are very good. That's the one thing as well. That's why the road tax is so high on cars, is because the money does get used for really good cars and everything else. So our infrastructure is very good in the Netherlands in general. But this car is fun to have, you know. Let's just hear it a little bit. I mean, it pulls off when you need it, you know. It really does go. I mean, that's the one thing. When you kick on the gear, it goes at a certain mile an hour, right? And it's 4x4. We don't have it in 4x4 right now because actually I'm gonna be very honest, I don't know how the 4x4 works, and the changing gears, it's very, very, very smooth. You don't have to stand still to really reverse or anything. It's just American car. It's fucking amazing. So we're gonna go this way. I actually will be honest, I got no clue where I am right now. We're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Zeeland. I don't know where we are, and the brakes are great. You know, no squeaky brakes, nothing. The one thing about these cars with high mileage, and it's all, is you have to maintain them. That's the one thing as well. It's with any type of car that's high mileage. You want to make sure that you really just maintain it. I'm gonna go turn here because I actually don't want to go into this village. I want to really just stay on the side tracks of the road. It doesn't have a reverse camera, it doesn't have none of that, so you'll have to use your head and everything else, which is actually quite fun. You know, it's fun going from a modern car to a car that doesn't have all the stuff on board. It's really fun once in a while, you know. It makes you think like, oh shit, I'm actually driving as well. And like as I said, you know, it's got everything you need. It's got air conditioning, you know, it's got the AC, it's got warm massage seats, believe it or not. Well, not massage seats, but it makes your seats warm, which is really, really nice. Like I said, this car was quite ahead of its time. Like, really, like a lot of cars back in the 2000s and shit, they really were ahead of its time when it came to luxury interior. Now, I will show you the exterior just now as well. What I like about this car is it's very big, you know. People feel intimidated when you drive this car on the road, and you feel like a total fucking badass when you drive it as well. Reason why? Because this thing is massive. It's wide, it's chunky, some people would say, but that's what makes it so nice for people like my dad and I, which we love this car. I would have bought this car or this specific model or whatever, if it wouldn't have been for the road tax, like I've mentioned. It's a real shame. But this car has everything that I ticked off on my wish list. Yes, it may not be the most luxury, but it drives so smooth. And when a car drives so smooth and so simple, you know, the rest doesn't matter. It's got a big booth in the back. It's a very spacious car. It's very high as well. You know, it's got everything. It's got the mirrors and shit. So this is the interior. This is the steering wheel. This is not manufactured. This doesn't come with in the car, but the previous owner was a smoker. It's got everything. You know, it's got air conditioning. As I mentioned, the radio had to get off. It's got the hazard lights, and I love how this car sounds with the hazard lights. It's got the mirror, and it's very, very spacious. You know, you'd be really surprised, but the booth is very, very spacious. It doesn't justify this camera how spacious it is, but it's a really nice car. It's also been tinted out, and it's got basically just everything. Now, it is not a turbo. I haven't mentioned it yet. It is not a turbo, but you could do it to stage 1 tuning. It's got 205 horsepower standard, so you could probably boost it to 230, but there's no point. But as I mentioned, I've driven this car so often. It's just a really nice car. This car we really just only use for the dogs. At least I use it almost every single day, because the thing is, even now with the radio getting taken out, the battery still gets drained. And you know, sometimes with these older cars, you unfortunately have to buy some parts that are more expensive. I saw that very, very late. I'm so sorry for that. Look at these nice farmhouses. Damn, that's a pretty fucking nice house, if I could say so. But it's just a nice car, you know. The air conditioning works, you know. It's got cold, it's got warm. It's really basic, but at least you know which is which. It just sucks for the radio. It does have Bluetooth, it didn't work. It's got cruise control as well, I forgot to mention it. And obviously the American horn. I love that. Oh, I wish my car, the Mazda, had this horn as well. It's a really nice aggressive horn, if that makes any sense. It feels right nice, and the thing is, you don't feel no bumps. Like, you can go off-road. I'll show you right now. Just don't want to get a tire broken. I mean, look, I'm gonna go off-road right now. You don't feel like you're off-road. It's that smooth. Now you've got the Rubicon, obviously, which has the suspension and shit, like the G-Wagon as well. I'm pretty sure that has the suspension as well, that if you go over rocks and stuff, I don't know how to explain it, but I think you know what I mean. This doesn't have it, obviously, because it's a base model. I don't think Jeep ever came out with a Cherokee with that type of suspension. I guess you could put suspension aftermarket, but you know, what's the point really? It's kind of a waste, because in the Netherlands, at least, there's almost you're never really gonna go off-road. It's just these roads that you sometimes have to get off-road. That's why these roads are like quite small, because it's just roads that people don't really use often. Okay, so I'm gonna actually go right here. As I've mentioned, you know, the indicator sound, I love it. It's I guess you could say it's an American indicator. That probably doesn't really make any sense. You know, we're gonna go right here, because I have been here before, but I haven't been on this piece of road. So yeah, like I mentioned, it accelerates pretty nice. You know, it's not slow, it's not super duper fast. The one thing I will tell you right now is the tank is almost empty, so we have to be very cautious with not giving too much gas and fuck around. It's old school. It's a wonderful, wonderful car. yeah, my dad really got it because of the dogs, and for other stuff, you know, stone, brickwork, you know, you can't really do that in an Audi Q5 and damage the interior and exterior. You know, if you break the interior here, it's like, okay, yeah, it's not the biggest issue, you know. But this car, when he bought it first, it was very, very smooth. You know, he was very impressed. You know, it was high mileage, but like I mentioned, high mileage doesn't always justify a car. It shouldn't, because if the maintenance has been correctly done and maneuvered in a car, you know, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Now, this is a perfect example. What I mean is that I have to get off the road now. See, this is why it's so cool to just have a Jeep. You can just really just drive off-road. Fucking awesome. I love it. Oh, that's the one thing I can't do with my car. Well, I could, but it's been lowered so much, so you know, you wouldn't want to damage it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a U-turn. I haven't done a U-turn in a while. This is an intersection, and yeah, and the big steering wheel as well. It's something you're going to have to get used to if you've never driven a car this size. It makes that weird noise. It's a reason for it. It's also got ABS, which is something that is by law required with cars nowadays. Not all cars have ABS. I think it was something with braking or something, I don't know, but you get what I mean. It's a really nice car. Like I mentioned, you could pick up, it just really kind of depends on what build year you're looking for. If you're looking for diesel, here's the thing, you got gasoline and you got diesel. What is nice, why a lot of people with businesses use diesel, is it costs nothing road tax. However, the price of diesel is very, very low, but road tax is high. That's what I meant to say. And it's often 2 doors. This is a 4-door, but if you have a business, I think you're required to make it a 2-door. I don't know how to really explain about. Yeah, it's kind of odd how the laws work. Maybe it's not a law, maybe it's just a rule by the LDV. But you know, it drives really smooth. And the thing about this, you could do this, it won't tip over, unless you go too high in speed. Then the motherfucker will tip over. But as I mentioned, it's a great car. It's not really reliable when it comes to parts and stuff, because sometimes the parts will cost actually more than the car itself. Because if your engine blows up, yeah, well then you're pretty much fucked. A good friend of mine, he had a Jeep Cherokee. I think he still has it, but he had a diesel one, and his engine blew up, believe it or not. So the engine actually cost more than the car, part-wise, which really sucked. I think the engine cost a couple grand, and he bought the car for 3 grand, a diesel 2005 model, and the engine blew up. I don't really know what the reason was, but the guy, I guess, sold him a shit car, or I think he knew about it, or he didn't. But yeah, his engine blew up and he had to replace it. Took a couple of months. He eventually did try to look for a Jeep Rubicon. He really wanted it, but the dealer eventually, I don't know, the dealer was very vague. We didn't trust the dealer. You know, the dealer wouldn't open up about certain questions that we had, because you know, my dad is a car mechanic, an ex-car mechanic. It's the same with my car. You know, I had to take my dad with me because I want somebody that has knowledge about the interior and exterior. Because the most important thing is, when you buy cars of this age with the mileage that they've done, you want to make sure that not just the interior is decent, but it's about the performance of a car. You know, the interior you can always, you know, add stuff to the aftermarket, but the exterior, for like the engine or the whatever, right, that is the most important thing. Okay, you don't have to share the road, I guess. This stupid Fiesta, also a very nice car. It's just I don't really like Fiestas that much anymore. I used to have a big addiction to Ford Fiestas. I used to love them, man. But I guess since I bought a Mazda, I fell in love with it. Now obviously, when we're going to talk about Jeep, my favorite Jeep of all time, well, I actually got 2. It's actually not this car. No, you'd be quite surprised. This is actually not my favorite car to drive at all. My dream would be a Jeep Rubicon. I mean, that's such an awesome car. I fucking love it. And a Trackhawk SRT, man. I mean, what is that to say? You have people driving them here. Like I said before, the road tax is unfortunately high with SUVs and sport cars, you know. I don't think the road tax here justifies this car, because it's a really underappreciated car in my opinion, because you don't really see many people driving it, hence the insurance and the road tax. It's not even the insurance. The insurance is probably, depending on how long you've been driving and if you're risk-free, whatever, maybe 120 bucks all risk a month, really. Even at my age, shouldn't be too bad. 130 maybe if you're lucky. But it's still, like I said, the road tax, which is unfortunate. You really get punished for what you drive, and that's the difference with the Netherlands and the States. You don't get punished there. But then I don't want to be an asshole neither, but look how good our roads are in general. You know, we don't have potholes in the roads, and if we do, we say to the council, hey, listen, I found a pothole, no problem, they'll make it good. Like, these roads aren't relevant because nobody fucking drives here. So, you know, these aren't really relevant roads. yeah, very nice. It's just a great car, really. So if you ever want to buy a car like this, make sure that the engine is good. That's the most important thing. And if it's a automatic, make sure that just make sure the car's not fucked. You don't want to buy a car that isn't worth it. You know what I mean? Like, you often hear stories of people, I bought this car and within a month it broke down. So it's like, yeah, but dude, you bought a car with super high mileage, and the car is known in general to break down after a certain while, or it also depends on the usage of a car. Changing gears and reversing is so easy with this car, you don't even notice it. Amazing this car drives. What an underrated beast this is.